$2 trillion. That's how much market cap evaporated from the software sector in 30 days at the start of this year. Not from a recession, not from regulation, from AI agents starting to do the jobs that SaaS tools were built to support. And here's what nobody's saying out loud. This isn't a correction. It's a category redesign. The entire premise of how software gets built, priced, and sold is being rewritten right now. And most of the industry is still debating whether to add a chatbot to their dashboard. Today, we're going to go deep on where SaaS is actually headed. Not predictions, not hype, the structural forces that are separating the companies that will dominate the next decade from the ones that won't exist in 5 years. So let's get into it. This is SaaS Evolved, where we break down the forces reshaping the software industry with rigorous, opinionated analysis. We're not much about AI hype here. We don't do tool roundups, but we do discuss the structural signals you need to make better decisions, whether you're building, running, or investing in software in SaaS. I'm Rob, and this is where the real conversation happens. Thank you for joining us for the SaaS Evolved podcast. So, where is SaaS going? It's a question I get asked constantly by founders trying to figure out what to build for the next 5 years, by executives making platform bets that can't be easily reversed, and by investors trying to understand whether the $408 billion SaaS market is still growing or quietly imploding. And the honest answer is it depends entirely on which layer of the stack you're looking at, because SaaS isn't dying. But the version of SaaS that powered the last 2 decades, that version is absolutely dying. And what's replacing it looks almost nothing like what came before. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through the 5 structural shifts that are redrawing the SaaS landscape right now. We're talking about the collapse of per-seat pricing, the rise of agent-native software, the disappearance of the user interface itself, the new economics of build versus buy, and what happens when your entire category gets absorbed into a platform layer nobody saw coming. This is the episode for people who want to think further ahead than the current news cycle. So let's go. So let's start with the most visible crack in the foundation, and that's the per-seat pricing model. For 20 years, per-seat pricing was the engine of SaaS economics. More employees meant more seats. More seats meant more revenue. Expansion revenue was basically automatic. Net revenue retention above 110% was the gold standard. And the entire business model was designed to grow as your customers' headcount grew. The logic is collapsing. When one person equipped with AI agents can do the work that 5 people used to do, your customer doesn't need 5 seats anymore, they need 1, maybe 0. The unit of value is no longer the human sitting in front of the screen, it's the outcome that's being produced regardless of who or what is producing it. And we're already seeing the impact. Multiple SaaS companies reported slowing growth in their Q4 2025 earnings. Not because AI failed to deliver productivity gains, but precisely because it succeeded. Customers are reducing seats. They're renegotiating contracts. They're building internal tools that replace what they used to buy. The companies that recognize this early are finding that the new models can actually generate more revenue per customer if you get the transition right. But there's always a revenue dip during the switch. And most boards don't have the stomach for a revenue dip, even a temporary one. So the real question is not whether per-seat pricing is dying. It definitely is. The question is whether your company will manage the transition proactively or be forced into it by a competitor who already did. Now, the second shift is more fundamental. We're moving from AI enabled software to agent native software, and the difference certainly does matter. AI enabled is what most incumbents have shipped so far. Take your existing product, bolt on a chatbot, add some autocomplete, put AI in the marketing copy, and call it innovation. That was the table stakes by mid 2025. Every vendor has AI capabilities now. It's not a differentiator anymore. Agent native is something completely different. Agent native software doesn't assist humans with tasks, it executes the task autonomously, it owns the outcomes. The human sets the objective, the agent figures out the workflow, executes it, handles the exceptions, and reports back with results. Think about what that means for the software layer. If an AI agent can handle customer support tickets from intake to resolution, what's the role of your ticketing software? If an agent can manage a sprint from planning through deployment, what does your project management tool actually do? If an agent can prospect, qualify, and nurture leads through the pipeline, what's left for your CRM to own? The answer is the workflow layer gets compressed. The tool that used to be the product becomes the feature of an agent. And the value migrates from the interface to the intelligence behind it. So the companies that understand this are rebuilding from the ground up, not retrofitting. And the ones who don't, they're adding AI features to a product category that's about to get absorbed. Now, moving on to shift number three, we're going to see a lot of interfaces disappearing. Now, this is the shift that gets the least attention, but may have the biggest impact, in my opinion. SaaS was built on dashboards, drag and drop workflows, point and click configuration. The user interface was the product. You designed it, you iterated on it, you competed on it. Entire companies lived and died in their UX. But when agents are executing the work, there's no one sitting in front of the dashboard. The interface shifts from visual to conversational to ambient, and eventually it disappears entirely. You don't open a tool, you state an intent. The system handles everything behind the scenes and surfaces only what you need to know. That changes the competitive dynamics completely. If no one is using your interface, you can't compete on design. You can't compete on features. You compete on three things: the quality of your data, the reliability of your outcomes, and the depth of your integrations with the systems around you. And that's a completely different competitive game. It favors platforms with proprietary data, deep API ecosystems, and infrastructure level positioning. It punishes standalone point solutions that lived on the strength of their UI. Now, the fourth one, the build versus buy, is being recalculated. So, and this is one that should terrify every SaaS founder. So, moving on to shift four, the build versus buy equation has fundamentally shifted. And if you're in sales, having to compete now with a company that could potentially build their own tool is something you probably don't want to have to deal with. But without getting into that, I mean, the whole reason SaaS worked in the first place was because building software in house was expensive, slow, and it required specialized engineering talent. Buying a subscription was almost always cheaper and faster than building a custom solution. I mean, that was the economic foundation of the entire industry. AI changed that math. When an engineer with AI assisted development tools can build in a weekend what used to take a team 3 months, the cost of building drops by an order of magnitude. When non technical operators can use AI to create custom workflows and internal tools that do exactly what they need, nothing more, nothing less, the appeal of a one size fits all SaaS product can completely diminish. We're already seeing enterprises build internal AI tools to replace purchased software, not because they want to. Managing internal tools is certainly a headache, but because the gap between what they need and what the SaaS product delivers has become large enough to justify the investment, especially when AI makes that investment dramatically cheaper. Now, I don't know about you, but in my past, I've certainly sold a lot, and I've been in CS uh, with a lot of companies that certainly were competing with very technically advanced competitors, But just as often, you deal with companies that basically just want to do a highly customized Excel spreadsheet. So think about that in the future where companies are now, they already prefer doing it themselves. Spreadsheets are very cheap. Now they can create an entire piece of software, with AI that replicates what they were wanting to get at with their Excel sheet. So the functionality of the Excel sheet with the cost of obviously being a lot cheaper than a lot of the software that's out there now. So consider that if you've ever dealt with companies that you're competing a lot with Excel, because that sort of adds a bit of context to how much this can change the landscape. Now, this doesn't mean that all SaaS gets replaced by internal tools, right? I don't want to say that. That's a bit too far. It means the bar for what justifies a SaaS purchase is going up, and that's not just up, but way up. Your product can't just be good enough; it has to be delivering something to the customer that genuinely cannot be built internally. So we're talking about proprietary data, network effects, compliance infrastructure, scale that a signal team cannot replicate. If you don't have that moat, you're very vulnerable. I'm moving into category or shift five, I should say, and that's category absorption. Now, this is the final shift that we're going to be addressing today. There's probably going to be a whole lot more that I'm going to miss. And if I do, let's start the conversation in the comments. So, this final shift that I'm going to address today, I would say is the scariest one for incumbents. Um, and of course, as I mentioned, it's category absorption. So, this is what happens when an entire SaaS vertical gets swallowed by a platform layer that didn't exist 2 years ago. We've already seen early versions of this. CRMs, uh, they're not just competing with other CRMs anymore. They're competing with AI agents that manage customer relationships natively without a dedicated database. Project management isn't just competing with other project management tools. They're competing with agents that coordinate work autonomously across systems. The pattern is pretty consistent. When AI agents can orchestrate workflows across multiple tools, the standalone tool in the middle becomes highly redundant. The value moves to the orchestration layer, the platform that agents interact with to get things done. And the platform doesn't look anything like a traditional SaaS product. So, where does this end? Honestly, nobody knows. We're in the early innings of a structural reorganization of an entire software industry. But the direction is pretty clear. The number of standalone SaaS categories is going to shrink dramatically. Some will merge, some will get absorbed into platform layers, and some will simply cease to exist because agents eliminated the workflow they were built to support. The companies that survive will be the ones that either become the platform layer or embed themselves so deeply into one that they're irreplaceable. So, where is SaaS going? Let me bring this together. The pricing model that powered the last 2 decades of growth is breaking. Agent native software is replacing AI enabled software as the new standard. User interfaces are disappearing as agents execute work without human dashboards. The economics of building versus buying has shifted in ways that raise the bar for every SaaS product on the market. And that might be a good thing. And entire categories are being absorbed into platform layers that are still taking shape. This is not a prediction. This is what's happening right now in real time. The $285 billion valuation that evaporated earlier this year wasn't panic. It was a market catching up to a structural reality that operators on the ground have been living for months. And here's the thing, the market is painting all SaaS companies with the same brush right now. It's treating this as an existential risk for the entire category. But the reality is more nuanced. AI will have differing impacts. Some people will be severely weakened, others will be stronger than ever. The difference is not whether you're adopting AI. Everyone's adopting AI. The difference is whether you're redesigning your product, your pricing, and your competitive position around a world where AI agents do the work, or just adding features to a model that's about to become obsolete. So the window for making that choice proactively is closing. Not in 5 years, not in 2 years, right now. So if you're listening to this as a founder, as an executive, or even somebody that's working your way up in a SaaS company, and you want to see the writing on the wall, or start writing your playbook, I would say now is definitely the time. You'd rather do it proactively. I'm not saying call your customers tomorrow and move to an outcome based model, but certainly do have that playbook in your back pocket for when it does become a consistent conversation, because it will. And the last thing you want to do is be caught off guard by it. So if this episode hit different, if you're sitting there running through how these shifts apply to your company, I want you to know that this conversation doesn't have to end here in this video. The SaaS Evolve community is where founders, executives, and operators who are actually navigating this transition share what's working, what's not, and what's coming next. It's not a comment section, it's a working forum. We're talking about field reports from people living the transition, real time pricing intelligence, disruption signals before they hit the headlines, and direct access to the kind of strategic conversations that you're not likely to get, from a newsletter or a LinkedIn post. Um, we call it the SaaS Forum. The link is going to be in the description. Whether it's launched by the time this episode is released, I don't know. Likely it'll be launching in I would say early Q3 of 2026. That could change. We are trying to get more content out to the channel just to build it up a little bit before we launch the forum. But certainly, if you like what you're listening to, the podcast is just one out of the many pieces of content we're going to be putting on here. Um, it's one of the more long form pieces of content, though. Certainly subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you're following along, because we will release a SaaS forum here pretty quickly. And I think in a world where AI is going to eat up a lot of the stuff that we're probably looking forward to getting rid of, but at the same time, it's going to have some consequences that we're not prepared for. I think community is how you're going to be able to stay ahead of it, in terms of getting one single truth from founders, executives, and ops personnel that are working on the floor. I think it's very important to maintain a good community, and that's what we're going to try to do with the SaaS forum by SaaS Evolve. So stay tuned for that. But aside from that, please leave your comments in the comment section below. I love hearing feedback on the types of content that we create here. And thanks again for dropping by. I'll see you in the next episode.